My friends told me he was ugly and I could do better. So I dumped him, but now I can't get him back. You know how they say bad friends corrupt good manners? Well, it's certainly true. And I'm a living witness of this saying right now. Hello, Reddits. My name is Sam, and I am 25 years old. I do contract jobs. That is, I don't necessarily work for a particular company. I am usually contracted to work. I really need your advice, guys. I just lost my boyfriend of 5 years because I followed my friend's advice, and now I really regret my actions. My friends told me he was ugly and I could do better. So I believed them and did this, and now it's all ruined. Hear me out before you judge me, please. I actually grew up in a family who were considered the poorest of the poor. I mean, we were poorer than most families in our town. My parents loved each other so much, and my mother had gotten married to my father behind her parents, my grandparents, backs, and they had been so angry and had cut off every connection with her. Even when she gave birth to us, myself and my 2 brothers, they never showed up, and until now, I do not even know them at all. My father worked as a gardener, and despite being educated, he still could not get a good job, so he had to settle for the gardening job. My mother at first depended on my father, but after Elliot was born, she had to start working because things were really difficult. Because she had gotten married to my dad behind her parents' backs, and they had cut her off, she couldn't continue her education, and so she was literally a dropout, which meant the only jobs she could get were menial jobs. Because she had a child, most people turned her away, and for the first year, she couldn't get a proper job. When Elliot was a year old, she started leaving him with me so she could work afternoon and night shifts. I was already 7 years old by then, so I was able to take care of my siblings. When it was evening, Dad would arrive from work and take over taking care of us, and by morning it would be Mom's turn. She'd dress us up for school and then go to work after. That continued until I was in high school. I was placed on scholarship because of my good grades, so it made it easier for my parents to focus on my siblings. I hated having to live like that. It annoyed me very much, especially when our next-door neighbor would look at us in pity and would bring her daughter's old clothes for me, or would call my brothers and me to come eat when she noticed we were hungry. Most times I refused the food because I felt she was just being a hypocrite, but my hungry brothers didn't mind. One time I mentioned it to my parents, that I didn't like how the woman would always try giving us stuff, but my parents shrugged it off and even said she was just being kind, and that pissed me off even more. When I was done with high school, there was no money to go to college, so I had to sit back at home. And since I couldn't just sit around and do nothing, according to my parents, I had to get a job to help with the bills. But when I did get myself a part-time job, I was not even willing to share my money, especially because I felt I was the one who went through the pain of doing the job, and I had to share my money, the money I earned again. The first 3 months, though, I did give my mother money to help with the bills and all, but eventually I stopped giving it all, and surprisingly, my parents didn't ask for it either. I wanted to spend money on myself and look good. I saw girls my age, how they dressed, the makeup they had on, and how easy it was for them to dump all their money on goodies and clothes, and I really envied it. I wanted that too, and I had made up my mind to do that for myself. I started buying myself some of the clothes I wanted and little makeup. I even learned how to apply it by watching several videos, and after a lot of very crazy makeups, I was able to perfect the art. My dad had bought me the phone I used, though, as a congratulations for finishing high school with good grades. Soon my dad was able to save enough to send me off to college, and I was really glad, though not entirely because it was obviously not the college of my choosing, but seeing that I had no choice, I gave in and just went with the flow. My first year as a college student was hard, not academically, no. As I said before, I was a relatively bright student, and I could tackle problems easily. I did not choose my major in my first year of school. I wanted to see what would work for me, and because I had lots of dreams, I was quite indecisive. So my first year was difficult because if envying was the word I used for when I was in high school, then oppressed would be a bigger and better word to describe how I felt in the university. I was always trying to lie about my background so I could make friends. Well, not exactly lies, I just usually tweaked the truth a little bit, especially the part about having poor parents. The rest were usually true. But it's one thing lying about rich parents, and it's another when it shows that you don't have rich parents. My dress sense, the way I was always in awe of new things, and when I couldn't even afford lunch, it probably gave me away, and soon enough I had no friends. I eventually decided to study business because I couldn't think of anything better. My parents agreed with my choice and had even advised me as their child. But of course, I was rebellious and was determined to do the opposite of things they told me to. I started to care less what others thought about me in school. I worked as a part-timer in a cafe near my school, and I would work afternoon shifts mostly because most of my classes were usually in the morning, and I made sure that I read through the material so I could catch up. I had no friends until I graduated. Of course, I had some I did speak to, but only when necessary. Truthfully, I was bothered whenever I saw people walk in groups of 2s or 3s, sometimes even more, and they seemed to have interesting things to talk and laugh about. It would bug me for a while before I shrugged it off again. It was until I met Coral after college, who had surprisingly gone to the same college as me, but we never spoke, not even once, until we graduated. I had gone to a party, not because I was invited, but because I had been bored out of my mind. It was there I met Coral, and she had spoken to me first. Surprisingly, we had gotten along really quickly, and before long we rented out an apartment together to stay while we job hunted. After 3 months of looking for a job, I got one at a very famous company, and I was really excited. Coral hadn't gotten a job then, but I did not mind providing for us both. Soon enough, Coral introduced me to a childhood friend of hers, Sarah, who had come into town looking for a job and also a place to stay. We had also gotten along so well, and I had even allowed her to stay with us in our apartment. Sarah started working part-time jobs so she could contribute to the bill payments, and I was glad. But there was something about Coral that was not so cool, but I didn't exactly mind at that time. Coral liked to be treated like some princess. She had this deranged view of life, and at that point, I knew she hadn't gotten a job because she hadn't been trying enough. But she was my friend, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings by speaking out, so I just kept quiet about it, and I did not even really see it as a big deal. A year into my job, I got fired. It hadn't been entirely my fault, though, but I had disobeyed one important rule in the company, which I obviously thought nothing of until I was actually asked to leave with some compensation. Well, at my workplace, one of their rules was never to date a coworker, your boss, or even a customer. When I first heard about the rules, I really hadn't thought much of it because I had felt it was absolutely ridiculous. I met Mike at the office. He had been my direct supervisor, someone I reported to. Mike had been really charming, and for the first time in my life, I found myself having a crush. I tried really hard to separate work from personal feelings, but it had been hard, especially because Mike had shown me the same interest. He would persuade me to have dinner with him after work, and would always call me into his office with different business reasons, only to talk to me about his feelings for me. I eventually agreed to date him, and it was really sweet for a while. Mike would ensure he dropped me off after work and the once-in-a-while surprise gifts. Whenever we had business outside the office, we would actually stop by some hotel for some quick sex after we were done with business. Mike was my first, sexually, and I was really happy for a while. I had even started thinking of quitting and getting another job because of the company's rules, so Mike and I could date openly. I had thought it was because of the company's rule we were sneaking around, until I found out too late that Mike had actually been married with 2 kids, and his wife happened to be the daughter of the CEO of our company, and she had found out about our affair. She had come into the company to threaten me to leave her husband alone. Imagine the shock I had felt that day, when I had suddenly become the office's new topic, and everywhere I walked into seemed to have eyes on me. The next day, I had been handed a letter telling me that my services were no longer needed in the company, and the craziest thing was Mike was not even fired. I was the only one who bore the consequences of our actions together. I had been really hurt, and had sworn to hurt any other married man that came near me. I had been back to job hunting again, but this time, I wasn't in much luck because after 4 whole months, I still couldn't get a decent job. So when Sarah suggested we start a business where we could do anything for anyone except prostituting and stealing, and that we would be contracted to do so, I had agreed, and Coral had also thought of it as a good idea. Then Coral had started dating her boyfriend. The man was surely old enough to be her father, but she hadn't minded because he was giving her lots of money. So she had told him about our business, and he had given us the necessary capital to start it. The first 3 months weren't as easy as we had thought it would be, but eventually business picked up, and we were making good money from it. We were contracted to do all kinds of jobs for a short while. That is, sometimes it was a delivery job, sometimes a temporary secretary, and others like that. We even employed some people to work with us, and it was good. By then, Coral had started dating 2 different guys besides the old man she was with. According to her, she liked to have a taste of both young and old, however disgusting that sounded, but it wasn't my issue, so I didn't mind. Sarah, by then, was also dating a guy who was younger than her, and she was literally sponsoring everything about him, and despite our warnings, she continued because she was in love with him. Well, that was until she caught him with another woman who was much older than her. Both my friends had complicated love life issues. I don't even know why I was so stupid to believe that advice coming from them both would be good for me to heed to. Adam, my boyfriend, whom I'm here to ask advice about, met me through a job gig he had contracted us to do, and I was the only one to do it because it was a temporary secretary job gig. It was supposed to be a 3-month contract, and we had, of course, agreed to the payment. He had newly started his business, and he hadn't had time to interview and employ a secretary just yet, which was where I came in. The first month we didn't really speak except for work-related issues, but I guess he had started noticing me then. By the second month, things were more settled for him, and he would surprise me by asking to go out for dinner. At first, I really hadn't thought much of it, but when it started becoming more frequent, I began to question his intentions. Truly, I liked him, but I hadn't wanted the same issues as I did with my last job, so I caged my feelings and focused more on work. By the end of the 3rd month, when our contract was over and I had already gotten a replacement for my job and things were finally settled, Adam had taken me out to dinner to celebrate the end of a successful work contract, his words, not mine. He had then confessed his feelings for me and had asked me to be his girlfriend. I had been very surprised, but I hadn't let it show. I had been so busy trying to make sure that we didn't have anything between us other than work the whole 3 months that I had not even noticed his feelings for me. I did suspect, but I hadn't been sure, so I had just shrugged it off. After some weeks, I decided to give us a try, and saying yes to him had probably been the best thing I had done. Adam was just the sweetest boyfriend. He made sure I was fine at all times and would always make time for me when, in fact, I knew how demanding his job was, especially as the CEO of a growing company. He would buy me gifts, and whenever he got a new client, we would celebrate in grand style. I mean, he'd take me out to dinner, sometimes lunch, and he would buy me a present, or sometimes he would even take me on a trip. He made it really easy to love him. He was understanding, too, and supportive. Whenever he had to make a huge decision, he would speak to me about it first before actually going ahead with it. Our first 3 years of being together were total bliss, and even my friends, now that I think of it, envied that they were clearly in unstable relationships and didn't have what I had with Adam. So I guess it was easy for them to suggest me breaking up with him. Whenever I spoke about Adam, they were quick to dismiss him and usually would end up telling me that they did not trust him. Adam did not like my choice of friends either, but he respected the fact that they were my friends, and he never spoke one ill word about them, unlike them, who did so every chance they got. Adam introduced me to his family on our 3rd anniversary, and his family loved me. I couldn't introduce Adam to my family because I had already cut them off, so I lied that I didn't have one. I had not even spoken to my parents for years, and my siblings, last I heard, were doing well for themselves and supporting our parents. I hadn't intentionally done that. I just wanted to be free of them somehow, Like I didn't want that burden of taking care of 2 younger siblings and also my parents. I didn't want that responsibility, and it was not hard to shake off because my parents did not even ask anything of me. So it would seem weird to introduce them to Adam after literally cutting them off from my life. So I had lied to Adam about them. Our 4th year into the relationship was when our problems began, or should I say, was when I started to derive pleasure in starting a fight with Adam. Coral and Sarah somehow managed to convince me that a relationship of 4 years with no fights or arguments wasn't real, that it was either Adam was cheating on me and hadn't wanted me to find out, and he was treating me nicely because he wanted to keep his other relationship a secret. So I started to pick fights for no reason. Usually, I would spend most of my weekends at Adam's place, and the only times I didn't do that was when I was busy with a work contract that included weekends. So that weekend, I had no work, but I decided to stay back at my apartment with my friends and see if Adam would notice. He had called that morning to ask if I was coming over as usual, and I had said no, and he hadn't even asked why, and he did not call me or text me until that evening. I had been fuming, and I had lots of thoughts in my head. I thought he had probably been with the girl he was cheating on me with, or perhaps it was the girl he was cheating on with me. When he had called, I had just angrily spoken to him, and when he had asked what the problem was, I accused him of cheating on me. It took a whole week before Adam was able to convince me he was not, but I was still not totally convinced, more because my friends kept giving me different scenarios, and my imagination was wild enough to think very stupid things. I started to behave aggressively and stalked him, watching his every movement. In fact, one time I managed to ruin a business deal for him because I had stalked him per usual that day, and when I had seen him having dinner with a woman, I had seen red. I hadn't even stopped to notice that there was a suit jacket resting on the chair beside the woman, which meant there was another person with them, and I hadn't stopped to notice also the documents in front of Adam. I had just gone and stuffed the woman's face in her dish. It had been a hot plate of food, so I had done some damage to her face. Well, thankfully, Adam had quickly poured some cold water on her face before any real damage was done. It was when the other man, who had excused himself to use the restroom, came back that it dawned on me what exactly Adam had been doing. Adam had lost that business deal as he couldn't keep his possessed girlfriend under check. Adam had been so angry with me, and it took more than a few words of apologies and reassurance that it wouldn't happen again before he was able to forgive me. It had, of course, happened again. This time it was his cousin I had seen him hugging outside his apartment, and I had, of course, misunderstood the whole thing and tried to beat her up. But Adam had held me back and prevented me from doing so. It was after he had told me who she was that I became calm and started regretting my actions, and I had apologized to them both for my unruly behavior. It continued like that, though. I did not trust Adam with any woman, and Coral and Sarah did nothing to calm me down. Rather, they usually helped aggravate the whole situation. A few days before our 4th anniversary, I went and did another thing again, and Adam had been so upset that he refused to go on the trip we planned, even though I had apologized to him. I had gotten angry and decided to go, but not alone. I went with Coral and Sarah, and the night of the day we arrived, we went to a club. It was really wild and all, and the dress code had been to match your dress with a mask, so you didn't know who was who. My friends and I had gotten very drunk that night, and when I eventually woke up the next day with a banging head, I was not in the hotel room I booked. I was, in fact, inside an apartment, naked and wondering where I was. It was right there I remembered that I had been kissing a stranger, since I couldn't make out his face because of the mask, and he had suggested going to his apartment to finish what we started, and I remember agreeing. The rest had become blurry. So in short, I had had sex with a stranger. I was trying to escape the apartment while picking up my dress from where it was flung and nursing my pounding head, when he walked in with a tray that had clear water in a cup and some bread and eggs. I hadn't said anything, just collected the tray and eaten. We got talking, and I found out that we did indeed have sex, and I remembered nothing of it, and somehow the stranger managed to convince me that he would help me remember, and we ended up having sex again that morning before I went back to my hotel room. When I told Coral and Sarah about it, they were excited and asked for every detail, which I, of course, indulged them in. When I eventually told them my fears of Adam finding out, they were quick to dismiss my fears. We met again that afternoon, the stranger and I got to find out his name was Adrian, and he lived around there. Seeing him clearly that afternoon, Adrian was every bit the guy described in a novel. He had that mouth-watering abs that would usually have girls swooning, and he had this really cute dimple, and he was definitely very handsome. And of course, when I introduced him to my friends, they thought so too. The trip Adam and I had planned was a week long, so I was able to spend more time with Adrian. We did less talking and more of the sexual activities, and when it was time to go, Adrian asked if he could come visit me anytime because he would miss me, and I had agreed. I felt guilty remembering Adam because I was the one doing the one thing I had accused him of. But Coral and Sarah told me that I couldn't not have fun and that they preferred Adrian to Adam. But I loved Adam, and I knew that Adam was definitely a stable person, and Adrian was more like a in-the-moment person. If I were asked to choose, I would choose Adam without blinking, but I don't know why I kind of felt attracted to Adrian. I am sure now it was just that I was sexually attracted to him, and he had a way around me that usually had me swooning. The week after I came back from the trip, I was extra careful around Adam, so I did not have to mistakenly mention anything about Adrian to him. By then, he was already calm and had forgiven me for what I did, so we were back to our usual routines. The second week, I was sure that I wouldn't even mistakenly mention anything about Adrian, and I relaxed again. A month had passed before Adrian contacted me to tell me he was in town and wanted to see me. I had been surprised and weirdly pleased for some reason, and I had gone over to his temporary place to see him. Apparently, he had gotten a work contract with an architectural company, and it had coincidentally been in my town. Adrian and I started seeing each other secretly, of course, because I hadn't wanted Adam to find out. Because I was so concentrated on hiding our relationship, I didn't have time to continue stalking Adam again, and he was happy with that, and he felt it was because I trusted him again. I had less and less time for Adam because between my work and seeing Adrian, there was barely enough time for him, and that started to worry him. He complained about it to me, and I had told him it was because of work. One time, Adam had almost caught me, but I managed to get out. I had decided to stay over at Adam's place because I hadn't wanted him complaining or suspecting my affair, so I stayed at his place that weekend. While I was preparing lunch for us, Adrian texted to ask where I was, and if I was still coming over to his place, and Adam had read the text. When he asked me about it, I had been quick to come up with an excuse that I was supposed to deliver some artwork for a client, but because I wanted to spend time with him, I had asked Coral, but he probably thought it was still me coming, which was why he was texting me. Truthfully, that situation had happened, but it was yesterday, and it was what saved me that day from Adam's suspicion. Having to go in between Adam and Adrian became tiring, and I told Coral and Sarah about it, and they advised me to end things with Adam and focus on Adrian because Adam was ugly anyway, and they did not even like him from the start. They somehow convinced me so hard that I thought it was the right thing to do because Adrian was, of course, every woman's dream. Even though I didn't have strong feelings for him as I did with Adam, I felt I would be the envy of every woman when I was spotted publicly with Adrian instead of hiding. Stupid me hadn't thought far enough to the point why Adrian was so cool with us being in a secret relationship. I thought I had learned my lesson from my first relationship, but I obviously had not. So after deciding that breaking up with Adam was the right thing to do, I went to his house that weekend and broke things off with him. Adam had begged me to reconsider, but he stopped trying when I eventually told him that I had met someone and we'd been together almost a year, and that my friends think him unfit and too ugly for me, and I really did deserve someone better. And I didn't think much of his reaction because I had been stupidly happy he stopped bugging me after I gave him that information. So to celebrate breaking away from Adam, I decided to go over to Adrian's place without informing him to surprise him. But instead, I was the one surprised. Very surprised, in fact. I saw a woman with a 6-year-old boy arguing seriously with Adrian, and she was accusing him of staying away because of his work and not attending to his wife and child, and he was trying to pacify her and tell her the work had been draining. I had become so angry at that point, and I wanted revenge. I had just literally ended my 5-year relationship because of a liar and a cheater. I had gone to him and started yelling while stylishly and clearly informing the woman that we had been together for the whole duration of his stay and that I never knew he had a wife or a child. His wife had gotten really angry and had just left with their son, and Adrian had shouted at me. Apparently, his wife was really the breadwinner of their family, and her family was so rich and influential they could put him out of every job he found for the rest of his life. Well, let's just say I do not think that Adrian and his wife are going to stay married after the whole thing. But the problem now is, I've been trying to speak to Adam since that incident because it seems that I am now seeing clearly after the whole thing. But Adam has refused to pick my calls or text me back, despite the many messages I've left him, and I really don't know what to do. I really sincerely want him back, but I don't know how to go about it. He wouldn't even allow me into his apartment because he had changed his password and everything I had access to before. Please, guys, how do I get back with Adam? Update. Hello, Reddits. It's been the most terrifying month ever since my breakup with Adam. I have had the worst emotional breakdown. Not only because you guys just made it seem like your really well-paid job to tell me how deranged and stupid I am, or how crazy I am to expect some sort of reconciliation with Adam, but because I lost Adam. Adam had been one of the best things that could have happened to me, but I stupidly lost him over some stupid affair and over some stupid advice I never should have listened to in the first place. I barely even speak to Coral and Sarah anymore, as they both decided, after I had accused them of jealously helping me end my relationship, to have nothing to do with me, which included the business. Since I had no capital, they decided not to even give me anything from it, shockingly. But the good part is, the business is failing really badly because they both do not even know how to handle anything without me in the picture. I cannot believe I stupidly trusted those two, who never had a lasting relationship, to give me good advice on my own long-lasting relationship. I feel so foolish. Now I've gone along and lost the only good thing about my life. All I do every day is just beat myself up mentally and ask questions of myself that I wish I knew answers to before I went ahead to destroy my life. Adam was everything I could have ever wanted. Funnily, he wasn't even ugly, but I guess I was just attracted to Adrian because of his fine abs, and that had blinded me from seeing him for who he really was. I wish I had never broken up with Adam. I desperately wish I could patch things between us. I wish I had never listened to those so-called friends of mine who are now not even in my life to help me bear the pain. The crazy thing is, I don't even have anyone to talk to because my siblings want nothing to do with me and have even prohibited my parents from seeing me too. I guess they have that right since they've been more of their children than I ever was. I feel so ashamed and guilty. I really feel so down. Now taking medication for migraines is now a normal, everyday thing because I cannot just stop my head from going over the situation several times in my head, and it results in my pounding head most of the time. Even my dreams now torture me with what could have been, but will probably never be now, because I obviously ruined everything with my own hands. I keep receiving threatening and angry texts from Adrian because his wife is already filing for divorce. Funny enough, his threats and anger do not even faze me because he ruined himself, not me. Just as I do not even blame him for ruining my relationship, I do not even expect him to blame me for ruining his marriage. We each did ruin ourselves by ourselves. Every day now. Waking up is more of the hardest chore I could ever do because all I ever do when I'm awake is think of how I ended up doing the one thing I should have fled from. I wish I had listened to Adam and stayed away from Coral and Sarah. Perhaps I would not have started to suspect Adam of cheating and tried to always cause an argument between us. And if arguments hadn't happened, then I probably would not have gone on that trip with them and would probably not have ended up in Adrian's bed or even thought of seeing him and cheating on Adam. The whole thing is just my fault, really. I should have never listened to them. Ever. But I did. And now I'm left all alone to live with the consequences of my actions. It's dreadful. If just a month is this hard, I wonder what the rest of the year will look like. For people who usually say, it would probably get better with time, I feel very strongly that that isn't going to be the case with me. I feel like each month will be worse than the other because of how shitty I feel right now. I understand Adam truly. No matter how desperately I wish we could try again, this time with me as a really faithful girlfriend, I understand why he would never want me again. I had literally gloated in his face about my affair, and even thrown it out there that my friends thought of him as ugly, and I did too. I could swear it. I have never seen Adam as ugly because he obviously did not have the Turnhead's beauty, but he was also really fine, and I don't know how I got it into my head that being with a more handsome man was better than being with someone who accepted every flaw of yours and never used it against you. I will probably be alone for the rest of my life. The future feels dark and empty and not so promising. Your words, guys. Your choice of words hurt, right? I know what you all probably think of me, but it's really fine. I think much worse of myself, but it doesn't make it less painful when I see your comments. But if I honestly hadn't cheated in the first place, I wouldn't even be here typing out all my heart's sorrow. And you guys would probably never even know I existed on this page. I guess you could say I did shoot myself in the foot. Update. Hello, Reddits. This is my last post here, and I just wanted to say a big thank you because, regardless of what you guys think of me, I still was able to pour out my heart here. Well, not totally, and not that it helped. It only ever did make things worse, but still, I really had nowhere else to turn to. I know that I will forever bear the guilt of losing a fine man like Adam, and I will forever be alone. Just don't ever turn out like me. Believe me when I say it hurts badly, very terribly in fact. Thanks and goodbye.